I call this hearing of the Federal Spending Oversight Subcommittee to order. 2 weeks ago today, the federal government reached its credit limit. As a nation, we owe almost $20 trillion, about $60,000 for each American alive now, including children. Yet we're told that $20 trillion is not that much, and that it may well grow, and that sometime soon we're going to have to ask again to raise the debt ceiling. This is what we want to explore here today. What is our debt situation, how it impacts our budget, and how should we respond? Some argue that raising the debt should just be automatic. We really shouldn't debate about it, that any debate or amendments would suggest the possibility of default and that would be dangerous. I don't want to default, but I also think it's wrong for Congress to approve more borrowing without necessary reforms and without making this a point to try to find a chance to fix some of the situation we have. I think it's a mistake also, though, to scare the markets and to talk of default and say default will occur if we don't have this vote immediately. If you look at our monthly average cash flow, the federal government is able to actually pay its interest on the debt, salaries for our troops, Social Security, and really much more, even if we didn't raise the debt ceiling. In fact, on an annualized basis, we can fund 86% of government without net borrowing. So default is not necessarily an unavoidable occurrence if the debt limit is not raised. Now, some scholars would argue that we shouldn't worry. We don't really need to ever pay back our debt. Keynes said not to worry about the long run because in the long run, we'll all be dead. Others have argued, the debt can be stabilized or simply inflated away. I don't share these views, but even for those who do, the one thing we cannot outlive or inflate away is the interest on our debt. This year alone, we'll pay $295 billion in interest. This is more than we spend this year on 7 cabinet departments, the White House, Congress, and the courts combined. More concerning is how ongoing deficits mean interest will consume more and more of the budget. I want to draw attention to this chart we have over here on the screen. It shows that our share of federal spending that goes to interest in the debt, discretionary spending, and mandatory spending over the last 30 years. What we see is shocking. Today, the American worker sees roughly 7 cents of their tax dollar going to interest, 30 cents to discretionary spending. But by the time a recent graduate today is near retirement, interest and discretionary spending will be taking an equal share of the tax dollar, roughly 19 cents. So under the current course, interest will progressively squeeze out discretionary spending. So what do we get for interest? Really nothing. Not 1 hour of work, not one sticky note. Now, we always hear that spending today is an investment and that cutting anything would be too devastating. We hear this really from both sides, both the right and the left. This is not a Republican-Democrat problem. This is a both parties problem. We hear right and left, we're always told, we'll be fiscally responsible tomorrow. But tomorrow never comes. We simply cannot continue to rack up the debt at the rate we are. So just 2 months ago, I proposed a budget that would balance in 5 years without touching Social Security and without an actual spending cut. Simply by freezing spending over 5 years, we would balance the budget. Yet only 14 senators had the courage to vote for such a budget. So this brings me to my last point. Doing the right thing is hard and often not politically expedient. Congress rarely makes simple, unpleasant choices, which means we end up facing difficult and unavoidable catastrophic problems. We only act when circumstances force us to. This is why the debt limit is important. It's our internal credit limit, not that of our creditors. It's an opportunity to reassess our spending and ask, how do we get here and how do we get out of this mess? Answering those questions as part of past debt limit debates have spawned most, if not all, of the federal process reforms. The most notable example was the '74 Budget Act. But Gramm-Rudman-Hollins, pay-as-you-go, all of the sequester, all came out of the debt limit debates. So when people say, oh, no, we should just hurry up and raise the debt limit without any reforms, it's exactly wrong. It's historically wrong. And every time we've ever gotten any process reform to try to fix it, it's been with a debt limiting debate. So I think we shouldn't shy away from having a real debate when we raise the debt limit. The Budget Act of '74 was supposed to be an improvement and fix problems, but big spenders have over 40 years, they've had 40 years to figure it out, and they largely have evaded it now. My hope is that, once again, as we debate raising the debt ceiling, though, that we can reform spending and have significant reforms that will put us on the right course. With that, I'd like to recognize Ranking Member Peters for his opening statement. But before I do that, I'd just like to note that this is Senator Peters' first hearing as Ranking Member of this subcommittee. I'd like to welcome him and look forward to working with you. Senator Peters.